So, you think this is a normal website? Of course not, you silly goose. It's a picture. But you can't interact with pictures. Look, I heard about not believing in what you can't see, but this one is right before your eyes. You gotta give me at least the benefit of the doubt. Okay, let's set the scene. Here I was, once again, thinking about making an app. But instead of deploying it to a server, zipping it into an archive, or God forbid, hosting it on a CDN, I thought, what if the entire thing was a single file? But not something like a zip, or an HTML, or an executable. Let the salt is the best spice people work with those. I was having bigger dreams, yeah, I guess you could say better ones. An SVG, as in the thing you usually use for website logos. But instead of just the logo, make it the entire site. Now, why would I do that? Well, if you just refer to the graph. Also, the format spec doesn't disallow it. You can technically embed HTML, CSS, JavaScript and data all in one SVG. Okay, so developing this thing came in two stages. First off, I wanted to see that it could actually work. And after this prototyping part was done, I decided I wanted to empower everyone to create their own full-stack SVG apps. So I had no other choice but to create a set of tools to convert basic, boring HTML, CSS and JS into valid SVG. Oh, and don't forget storage. Can't have a full app without storage. Both embedded into the file and cached in the browser, because I can, not should. So, back to that first iteration. SVG allows embedding stuff that is not graphics and vectors and other image stuff, if you follow these rules. First, you have to host your HTML code inside a foreign object tag. It's meant for elements not included in the SVG XML namespace, usually HTML. Second, like with HTML, a separate style tag is enough for your CSS, except it doesn't have to be inside the head tag, like you would with an HTML. Just make sure it's properly closed and in as broad a scope as possible. Third, inside script tags is where you'll want to write most your JS, but be careful to add the C data enclosing label. C data stands for character data and tells the XML parser to treat everything contained within it as literal text, so don't treat stuff like lower than and ampersand as markup. Unlike in HTML and even SVG embedded inside HTML, where the parser expects to parse HTML and all works accordingly, in this case the SVG parser doesn't know how to parse special syntax and will, more often than not, throw errors you'll bash your head in trying to locate. And last but not least, this one's my personal preference, but for storing data inside the SVG I chose a separate script tag with the type of application JSON. Sure, you can also go for using the metadata tag or a custom G tag in which the data is wrapped inside a C data block, but I think this one's the cleanest and easiest to parse. So, the styles are nothing special, same with the HTML, but the second one is because I, for some reason, wanted to only use HTML tags only when explicitly necessary, and manually draw every other element using basic SVG shapes and functions like translate and transform. Wouldn't recommend. Also, not pretty to look at. Oh, and you'll notice that I didn't listen to my advice when it came to storage and instead came up with a secret fourth option, using the description tag, which is intended for a long text-only description of the SVG. I later turned a new leaf and became a better man with the second iteration. Now, for the juicy part, there were actually 3 areas of interest. First off, I decided that the data should be both inside the file and cached in the browser. And when the user loads the SVG, the two are merged. This way, if you edit a version of your file, then someone else sends you their own version, opening theirs will have it so their data is merged. Pretty much a bare-bones version of conflict-free replicated data types, which, for those interested, are defined as such. However, all of you should know of their existence because they're the backbone of any collaborative app, like Figma, Google Docs, those stupid online mobile games with islands and farms and stuff like that, and even online gambling platforms. Secondly, because of those stupid safety nets imposed by your browsers, all files opened by them are in read-only mode, so you can't write stuff to them on disk, just because you'd get a malware epidemic or something, I don't know. So, saving the data means creating a new version of the SVG and downloading that. Not too hard using the wonders of browser APIs, but still an annoying caveat. And last but not least, creating HTML elements. This one took a long, and I mean long while to figure out. You see, if you create them like you would normally would, and then move on to opening the file in your browser, you'll notice something very strange happening. The elements are there if you inspect the DOM tree. They are structured properly, all the properties are applied, except for the styles. Whatever class you try to specify, it's not reflected visually. That is because creating them like normal instantiate them as SVG namespace elements, structurally identical to HTML ones, but not properly recognized by the DOM. The fix? Always create them with the XHTML tag present. It's short, but man, it took a while to figure out. Okay, now putting this all together, then adding some specific logic, I created a basic to-do app where you can create new to-dos, delete them, mark them as done, or change their order. All inside an SVG that you can share with others, have them do their own changes, then send them back to you. No server, framework, or even classic website needed. Look, I can even remind myself to like and subscribe if the video I'm watching is worth it. And yeah, it's cool and all, but you're not catching me writing one of these from scratch again. So, on to the next iteration of the project. I made it so that someone can create a folder where they have the classic trifecta of web files, while I also offer some runtime lib to help with the SVG specific stuff, and then bundle them all together using a custom script that combines all of them into a single final SVG file. So what I first did was write the runtime lib. I figured the most useful methods someone needs for this are initializing the image's dimension and viewport, creating valid DOM elements to be properly rendered inside the image, loading and saving data stored in either the file or local storage. For this, I made sure the storage either exists or I create it on the spot, then access it using the same ID based off the original file's name. And finally, exporting the file with updated data. Compared to the prototype, I made it so for this one, I first tried to use the File System Access API to open a Save As dialog, then only after fall back to automatically downloading a pre-named version. And then I wrapped all of these inside a global object that I assigned to the window instance, so that anyone can simply call the APIs using SVG app. Now moving on to the bundler. For this one, I made it so the user can input the path to their folder containing the files I mentioned before, as well as an output path for the SVG. Then, using this path as well as the one to the runtime lib, which is always the same relative to the bundler script, I read the contents of each and insert them accordingly inside a predefined SVG scaffold. I opted to include the styles in the same section as the HTML block, which is inside the foreign object tag. No particular reason except that it seems cleaner to me. Of course, this means I had to wrap it inside the CData block. Then, inside the script tag and the CData block, I first added the runtime lib, then the user return.js. I also made sure to include an empty data store inside the bare SVG scaffold. And now, with the tools in place, I got to testing them. First, I created the most basic counter app, but then I wanted to compare efforts by recreating the prototype. And when I say it was night and day, I'm not kidding. Who would have guessed? So, if you're tired of boring old JS apps and want something far more cursed, or if you just want to make your next resume a fully interactive portfolio embedded inside an SVG, you now have the tools. Oh, and I probably forgot to mention, but yeah, because it's an SVG, you can embed this bad boy inside other websites.